Hi everyone, we are live for the second day of the summit. Yesterday was totally incredible. We had 500 people from around the world watching us. It was such good vibes and with its insightful talks. And today we have two more incredible panels and welcoming the speakers from the Conscious Culture and Heartland Leadership panel. And I'm heading this over to Vanessa, and I'm going to pop up at the end of the panel with some questions from the attendees. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, hello, my lovely panelists. And also everybody who is tuning in. My name is Vanessa Kettner. I am a writer here at Grow Remotely. I'm trained as a coach, so I'm also very interested in everything that will be said here. The name of our panel today is it's Conscious Culture and Heart-Led Leadership, and I'm hoping that we will be able to completely unpack that today. If you guys don't mind, I would love for you each to introduce yourselves to our audience, and in the spirit of the name of our conference, which is Align, I'd love to hear why it's an aligned choice for you to be on this panel today. So, Justin, can I start with you?
Sure. Thank you so much, Vanessa. Good to see you, Sarah, Barbara.
You too.
It's an honor to be here. This is one of my favorite, when you don't feel good or you're tired or it's been a long day and you get to talk about consciousness and business and it kind of gives you that little espresso shot. That's how it is. I'm here because, to be very direct, a lot of people that look like me don't want us to be here in this place in business. And I'm an outlaw and a defier, and I want to go do things differently. And I can't think of a better person in particular, knowing Sarah a little bit, to align with to do that. And Barbara, I've admired your work since we met online as well. So that's why I'm here.
Lovely. Barbara.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much. So I call myself a human catalyst. I'm all about people and more well-being, who we truly are inside. I do believe that whatever we take out into the world comes from who we are inside. And if we don't know who we are inside, it becomes so difficult to navigate what's happening on the outside. And whatever is around us, it's actually what's stemming from inside. So the more we unpack who we are beyond our roles and our titles in our homes, communities, businesses, or the nation, the more it becomes easier to move through the world more authentically. So that's what I do. My background is psychology, anthropology. I'm a yoga teacher. I do mindful meditation, studying metaphysics at the moment, and a PhD in conscious living. So I'm really all about bringing out the inner being for everyone.
Thank you. Sarah.
Hi, everyone. Most of you probably know me. If you were around yesterday, at least you've heard me talking already. I'm excited to be on the panel because I like talking and I like having conversations with people. And as Justin said, this is probably my favorite thing to talk about on earth. So feels like I'm in the perfect place. And I guess it's probably kind of obvious why I'm aligned with what we're doing, given we created this summit. But just really excited to be here and to unpack what it is to build a company, lead a team, do business in this way, because it is different. It takes courage and bravery. And it's very, very expansive and rewarding. But as I say, it does take courage and bravery. And I've had to face a lot of my own fears of being rejected by society because I want to build a business in a new way. And I feel like I'm past that now, thankfully, but it definitely was something that I almost did it in secret for a little while. And now I'm like, we need to tell the world that there's other ways to live and other ways to do things. So kind of the opposite of in secret now.
Love it. And before we kind of get into a lot of the content, what I would love to hear from you all. When I think of heart-led leadership, conscious culture, I think of showing up. So it's about how we show up. And so I'm wondering if you could invite me, everyone who's tuning in, is there a way that we can show up to this session that would allow us to not only kind of hear what's being said, but experience what's being said kind of in line with what we're talking about? Is there someone who can speak to that?
I can give it a shot.
Yeah, go for it.
I think to lead with heart and consciousness and to be open to that is to come at life from a place of curiosity and also acceptance of things in their realness. And so, I invite myself and us on the panel, and I know we will because I know you both, to share the everything, what's hard, what's amazing, what's real. And also for those listening to just keep a really open mind and open heart to what is possible, because for most of us, we've been conditioned into leadership and business in a very hierarchical way. And notice and observe your own thoughts that might come up of like, oh, but that won't work in this situation, in my situation, or at this size company, or, there's so many limits that will show up. And I think really stepping into a heart-led space is to bat away those limits and just do it anyway.
Yeah, I just to add to that, if it's okay, Vanessa, that
please.
I think this is true in this conversation, and really the overall topic as well is pay attention to what you impulsively disagree with. The work of consciousness, especially in business, which, as you mentioned, Sarah, is very hierarchical, very linear, very literal, very masculine. Most business structures still have a masculine structure to them. Is that all of your social conditioning about this, your first reaction may be that you disagree. And what disagreement leads to is a lack of dissent, dissenting opinions. It leads to it leads to the enemy of all ideas and branding, which is sameness. And so pay attention to what you disagree with, and see if you still disagree with it. That's okay. But your first impulse, the way we use this in our sessions we do with our clients, our brand sessions, is you might be wrong. So that's how we challenge that initial impulse to disagree.
Love that.
Yeah, me too.
I definitely agree with Sarah and Justin. We're talking about heart-led leadership as well today. And when you think about the heart, it's you, right? We literally put our hands here. And what that means is we remove, if you want to maybe look at the human body, for you to get to your heart, we strip away all the layers, your skin, everything, right, to go to the heart. And that can be an analogy of remove all the roles that you've put on yourself or that you've taken from society, that society has given you. And these could be roles of being a Black woman or being a white man or being a white woman or just being a woman or just being white or being tall or being dark or whatever it is. And really sit down with yourself and say, before I was all these roles, who was I truly? Because when you walk into the door with that, it allows you to go in with, curiosity to say, okay, well, I'm still trying to understand myself. And that in itself is a journey. So then it allows you to open and create safe and non-judgmental environments for those you work with to actually step in and flourish, and to also feel it's okay to open up and be vulnerable. Because vulnerability, unfortunately, we've misconstrued the term when it comes to leadership, because like Justin has said, everything is so masculine in the business at the moment. But vulnerability is actually more difficult to yourself than being vulnerable with other people, because we all know our own big things and small things and mess ups and everything. We know ourselves, right? So it's so difficult to own up to that for yourself. Once you do that, it becomes so much easier to become more conscious and aware of what's happening around you, because you yourself have taken the journey. But if you haven't taken the journey of truly understanding who you are, and it's a lifelong journey, right? It's so difficult to then provide conducive environments for your teams to step in because of that hierarchy that Sarah was talking about, because it's like, oh, the boss said, so I should do that. I can't speak up. So indirectly, you are limiting the voices of the people you hired to bring in their skill set to help you and the business. So the more everything is a bit more open, the easier. So it goes back to consciousness, to self-awareness, to constantly check in with yourself, whether by yourself or with a coach or with a business partner, to say, let's be honest with ourselves. What are we constantly saying no to and why? Just as Sarah and Justin mentioned, we have to be aware of all the things, even the things that are positive that we say yes to. Sometimes we have to question that too, right? Because that's a lens we've grown up with to say, oh, that is right and that is wrong. But if you just go in and say that is right and that is wrong without unpacking why, then that won't help anyone or the team.
Lovely. My kind of knee-jerk reaction, my knee-jerk question to that is, I'm guessing that showing up in this way not only, I was going to say, transforms our businesses. Obviously, it transforms everything. But could any of you speak to how that transforms, what that looks like, and what transpires when we show up in this way?
I could jump in there. Oh, go, Sarah. Go ahead.
No, Barbara, please go ahead.
Maybe that's my job. I don't know. Maybe I should call on people, but go ahead.
You know, one of the big questions that comes up, certainly around conscious leadership, is does that have to do with the bottom line? What does that have to do with the profit? So my question always is your strategy clear? And when you look at the strategies, the 5 things of any strategy, right? What's the purpose of the business? Is that clear? What is the vision in terms of what do we want to do in the next 3, 5, 10 years? Pick a number. And then the mission, what are the actual activities we need to be doing? Your values, obviously, how do you present the work that you do or the product? And then an implementation plan that says, okay, we know the activities that we need to do. Do we know when they need to be done by? And what are the resources we currently have now to move forward with that, as opposed to waiting for more resources at the end? Now, the thing about strategies, what I find in organizations is they're not clear. Maybe they might be clear at the top, but not at the bottom. There's no transparency because of this hierarchy that Sarah was talking about. And so when everything is clear, it becomes so much easier to step back and then have time to actually revisit what's coming up within yourself, within your heart, around that strategy. Because when everything is clear and transparent, and everyone is given a voice and a platform to use the skills you hired them for, and to also have these types of conversations, when everyone is growing, the business is also growing because everyone is clear on where we are going. But the hierarchy does not come with clarity. The strategy becomes a lovely document that's printed out and shelved in the top office, but no one actually knows what's happening. And so people are sort of walking on eggshells, from what I found. And they're just going to work. They bring a certain lens because this is the workspace. And then they go home exhausted because they're having to put on a mask. And so their productivity suffers. So the more we are open, the more it becomes easier for people to step in, to be able to contribute, and then everyone grows as they move forward.
I think my take on that is, which I 100% agree with what Barbara said. My lens is through brand, and a brand, our definition of a brand is how other people experience what you believe. And so this intrinsic work that Barbara's talking about in the individual leaders and the individual people in the organization does what all groups of people do, is it creates an energetic footprint. So some brands like Southwest have a positive energetic footprint, and some brands don't have a positive energetic footprint. Well, that energetic footprint is the brand, because it's how other people are experiencing what you believe. And it kind of transcends, manipulation and persuasion and bullshit and all of the things that typical branding has done over the years. And it takes you to a new level, as consciousness should. And this is the powerful part related to the bottom line with your brand. There's 2 things. It transcends commoditization. You cannot commoditize consciousness. Now, there are brands that are what I call the woke brands, where they're sort of, or woke washing, where they're pretending to be all enlightened and everything, but it's just a marketing ploy. So I'm not really talking about that. I'm talking about creating differentiation in the marketplace, obvious differentiation. And you look at it from an energetic standpoint, this is all sacral energy, it's creativity. And the more you do it, the bigger the fire, the bigger the wheel becomes. And that then transcends commoditization. And the second thing is that it changes the conversation. When you raise consciousness, the conversation is not about selling products. It's about sharing ideas. It's no longer about pitching features or speeds and feeds. It's about sharing philosophy, what we call a leadership point of view with the world, that then you're inviting people into. And now you've made this huge shift from persuasion to invitation. And when you do that, another bottom line thing is your marketing costs drop significantly, because you're just using word of mouth and the energetic footprint and perpetuating that with good leadership, and letting the marketplace tell you what they want, tell you what price they're going to pay. And that drives out most or a significant amount of the cost of marketing.
Love it. I love so much of the vocabulary you're throwing out there as well, Justin. Energetic footprint. Sarah, I'm sure you have much to say on this topic.
Well, I mean, what comes up for me to share is, when I think about energy, I think it's interesting to share it because this is how I experience Growmotely and how I experience business is, and I'll share the story of Growmotely, but Growmotely is its own conscious entity that's not me. So Growmotely wanted to be born and wanted to exist, and it came to me and chose me as kind of the person to get it going. And I believe it's called all of you in who are on my team, and even all of you who are part of our ecosystem. Like, I really, really feel that. And I think coming to that place as a leader also is very powerful, because there's an ego death in that in itself of like, oh, I am not my company. Like, I want to believe I am. I want to believe that I'm a freaking genius and I came up with all these wonderful ideas or whatever in the world. But like, my truth is I channel it. And when I get out of the way and I clear my field, I get more. Like, it gives me the blueprint of what's next. And that has been happening over and over again since Growmotely started, since it first came to me. Every time I clear something big out of the way, a block in our field or in my field, I'll just get a whole blueprint of what's next. And I meditate every single day with Growmotely. I sit and I connect with the energy, and in my mind's eye, I'm very visual when I meditate and imagine and dream. But like, the color of Growmotely is actually this kind of light greenish. It's very like bright light in how I see it, but it's this kind of greenish, whitish kind of light, and it's a ball. And I mean, I've had so many experiences with the entity that is Growmotely in my mind's eye, but I sit every day and I feel it. And what's important to me, and I know for Growmotely to reach its fullest potential, and this is of any company really, which is its own entity, is that the energy is in alignment. So, and this comes down to all of the people and the partnerships and the clients and anything that you're doing in your organization or a marketing strategy, language you're using. If you can connect into the energy of the entity that you're working with, and this isn't just the leader, anyone in an organization, I mean, and you should want to. And I think that would be something to listen to right now is, do you have a desire to connect with the energy of the company that you work with? And if you don't, maybe like there's a better place for you to be working. Big concern if you're the leader of that organization, but equally for anybody, right? But to connect with that energy, we start to get a sense then of what it feels like, what it looks like, what it is when it's in harmony and when it's in this expansive kind of just humming state. And then as soon as something comes in that's not quite right, you can almost see it or feel it. It's a different color. Like, and it's not, when I say not quite right, I don't mean right and wrong right. I just mean not resonant with this. So if Growmotely, as an example, hired someone or did a partnership with someone that really didn't share the same values and the same passion for the vision and the mission, I would start to see maybe a purple dot in the sphere when I'm meditating, or a yellow dot. And that would be my indication of like, okay, I need to move something. And I know, like, listen to my heart. I know what the thing is. And usually I don't want to look at it because it means I have to have an uncomfortable conversation, or I need to admit that I or somebody in the field said yes to something that wasn't in harmony. But the best thing to do when we feel something that's out of resonance is to bring that to the light. And if we can do it with transparency and openness, the navigation out is gentle and it's expansive for everybody, because that yellow ball of energy has a yellow magnet somewhere that it can go, and it will grow with whatever that yellow magnet is, if that makes sense. As you can tell, I'm pretty visual. But when we get everybody, everything, our marketing language, our brand, everything in resonance with what this conscious entity actually is, it's just this expanding being.
Oh, I love it. And to your point, in my personal experience, I joined the Grow Remotely ecosystem in November on my first day. And I think I wrote to you, Sarah, just after day one, I felt like I had put on a pair of jeans that somehow had been, tailored for my body. And so it's a different visual, but it's the same. It was a feeling of alignment that was sort of otherworldly.
And this is the only thing we need to listen to in life is and feel is these things. And, if you've ever, I'm sure anyone who's listening has either worked a job or hired someone or taken on a client where it was just hard, everything was just hard. And you, in the victim mindset, in the victim consciousness, like, I can't believe they do business this way. This is terrible. And like, we can stay in that low vibration and sit around and complain about the thing. But all it really is we're out of alignment, and we need to just move ourselves away as quickly as we can. And if we can do that, as I said, with more openness and transparency, then it's probably going to be like very little collateral damage. Let's just move ourselves away. If we continue to deny it and we keep going down the path, that's when things usually get messy and blow up. And in the old world, which is still pretty pervasive, that's really standard, right? Like, don't talk about it, push it under the covers, everybody on either side bitch and moan and play the victim. And then we have this massive explosion in the end, and it causes trauma on both sides, and then healing and all of this stuff that has to happen as a flow on, which is not all bad. I mean, there's a lot of growth in that, but there are better ways to do things. There are more gentle ways, more expansive ways. And the growth in that instance can be a lot more beautiful, a lot more gentle, as I said, and not so traumatic.
If I could add on to that, well, not add, maybe to say the same thing as Sarah is saying, because in my thinking, I'm thinking of a client who would say, but Sarah, I don't meditate. And we might use the word meditate for anyone who might have that question, but it's whatever your spiritual practice is. Whatever gets you grounded and quiet in a space where you can think clearly. Mm-hmm. And what that does is it goes back to what Justin talked about, what Sarah just talked about around energy, right? And your feelings, the language of the soul, of your spirit, your inner being, whatever you want to call it, that's inside you, your higher God, whatever it is. This has got nothing to do with religion. It's your true self. Whatever that is, it doesn't use words that we as human beings use. It uses feelings. So whatever feels right, go walk that journey. And what doesn't feel right, explore that a bit more. Say, okay, where do I need to adjust? And that's how you can sort of move around your business, starting with yourself. So the more you shine a light on yourself, you increase your own self-awareness, and it becomes so much easier to see everything that's around you, something that does not sit down well with you or feel good with you. So in business, there's a lot of talk around emotional intelligence, but we don't go to get emotional intelligence. Our emotional intelligence increases as we are doing the work of self-awareness. So our emotional intelligence is the result of the work of self-awareness. So sitting down with yourself in a quiet space once a day would be awesome, just as Sarah does it, or toward the end of the day, morning, whichever. It has to be an appointment that you set with yourself if you are open to walking that authentic, conscious leadership space. And then we don't only stop at emotional intelligence, right? Because now what you need to do is to look around in your life to say, okay, what is happening? What do I need to adjust in all the areas in my life? So that you don't just stop at emotional intelligence, but you're growing to become emotionally agile in every environment, so that when there are challenges that do happen within the workspace or at home, it's easier now to walk and work through those challenges because you've built up the muscle as you're going, around bit by bit trying to figure out what is going on in life. And it does start at leadership. At the moment, because of the hierarchy structures we currently have, that, you can never lead anyone beyond where you are. So people will never go beyond where you are as a leader. And you have to be able to open up to be able to allow other people to come in and do that. So that spiritual practice it's very important. I would even go further to allow those spaces within the workplace. I was speaking to a colleague this morning, and we're complaining about the nature of our roads in Zimbabwe at the moment. They're not so great in Harare. And he was saying, each time I get to work, I'm just so wound up because there's bad driving and there are potholes everywhere. And, some organizations have like meditation or prayer rooms in their offices, where leaders have understood what's happening in people's lives because they've allowed people to come in and have those discussions with them. So that yoga room or quiet space, people have a safe space at work to go into and unwind before they actually start work, which means their productivity increases. And obviously that goes into your profit or return into investment. So it's really about understanding and allowing that space for your people to step in. And it starts really with you and understanding who you are.
And adding to what Sarah and Barbara said is, I refer to this meditation or mindfulness as just centering, getting centered, because I know that my energy is different when I'm off center. And so I know that would be true collectively if I was part of a large organization. There's a small, the small team at Root and River, but I think the main benefit here as it relates to sort of business strategy of centering or mindfulness or meditation is that you begin to discern the difference between instinct and intuition. They're radically different. Instinct is either very primitive, it's biological wiring related to fight, flight, or freeze. But if your ego's involved, which is true with a lot of leaders, it's this, your instinct is recalling prior information and either creating despair or delusion. Either way, it's an illusion. Either way, intuition is always right. It's always true, but it comes through stopping. And one of the things that's unacceptable in business still is stopping. And stopping is a strategy all the way back to the art of war and Sun Tzu, thousands of years ago. Stopping is a strategy because in that stopping, in that stillness, you can go, oh, okay, I have these instincts. Sometimes they're right. Sometimes they're good instincts, but intuition is separate and it's always, always right.
We talked about that a little bit yesterday with Jason Fried of Basecamp, and the conversation was centered around asynchronous communication, and it was kind of tactical, but in the end we kind of got to a place of talking through if we can create more space in our business for people to read things or listen to things and then think about them and then communicate back when they have time, which is the nature of asynchronous working and communication. We actually act more from intuition and that knowing and that sitting with something than that impulsive instinctual that can be quite common in a fast-paced office environment, especially with our conditioning of like, oh my God, I've got to keep moving, I've got to give the right answer, I've just got to go, how much. And we talked about it might feel counter to slow and create space and to think on things and contemplate and meditate, but actually we move faster because we are more into our flow state. I remember as I was breaking down my own conditioning of being in a very masculine driving place for most of my career. And after I sat with ayahuasca the first time, I connected with the feminine energy and understood like, wow, the power that was there, and started really shifting the way that I was doing things, giving myself permission as the visionary within the organization. That's the role I hold, to sit in a cafe and think. And that is, I'm working, like that is okay. I'm allowed to do that. Or now, like I was saying, to sit and meditate and connect with the energy of the organization. That is a big part of my role as the CEO and the visionary, but it's counter to that masculine force that was lacking the balance for many years. But when we can integrate the two, I mean, that masculine force is so powerful because once I've sat and contemplated and I understand and I've received the blueprint, awesome, let's go do it. but we're not executing stuff that we don't even know. We're executing from a place of knowing, from a place of heart.
Yeah.
Amazing. This makes me think, Sarah, of, you know, our summit is about the future of work. And so this, what we're talking about here, this way of being, this way of, or what we're creating, what we potentially can create within our companies, within our teams. I think of your word, Barbara, roadmap. What is the roadmap to having this be, there being more of this in the world, basically? Where do we go from here to get to the future, if indeed the future is more of this?
It's a process. It's a process. And I don't expect everyone to be a conscious leader right from the bat. It does take time sometimes. And sometimes we've already been on the journey, but it may take just this summit to then say, oh, okay, I'm not the only one who's thinking that way. So then for you, it's time to actually make the change, right? Those are the signals in the universe. The second thing that might be easier to grasp for most is look at the past 2 years of COVID. Whatever went ape-shaped or upside down in your business, in your personal life, in the community, anywhere in the world that impacted you negatively is a huge sign right now to say, oh, okay, I need to slow down. I need to stop. I need to figure out how to remove all the things that did not work so well, and to also understand why they didn't work well, not now during COVID, but before COVID, because of that intuition, right, that Justin is talking about. Because we sometimes know, but we just kind of push forward because that's how we've been doing business for however many years. So when you find yourself saying, well, that's what we've been doing all these years, stop yourself, check in and say, but is it working? Better still, did it work during COVID? If it didn't work, then it's not going to work next time. It might work in terms of we'll try and fit it into a box for the next 5 years. But let's say there's another pandemic or there's another challenge. Again, you'll be found sitting on your bum. So COVID is a good space to evaluate and say, okay, what really didn't work during COVID? Because there were clear signs before. So now let's do the opposite, or let us sit down. Let's listen. If I am the leader, I am the visionary, I'm the one who holds the vision for the business. If I'm not making time and space to do that, then the opposite means that I'm micromanaging my people every single day. Now, no one wants to be micromanaged. If you've got the right employees in place, no one likes to be micromanaged. That also goes back to the strategy. You may not be clear or transparent with the strategy, which means you're needing to micromanage people, which means no one is actually looking and protecting the vision of the organization, which means it's not going to go for the long haul. So the pandemic has allowed us those big signs, and most of them were painful for a lot of people, use that as a learning space to say, okay, how do we move forward with this? And whatever did work well, if you manage to pivot, then enhance that a bit more. And you'll actually find out that the things that we did that did work well during COVID were about understanding where our employees and staff were emotionally, physically, wherever they were, and how we could help them move forward. We always talk about external customers, the customers who are bringing in the business or the money or whatever it is. We forget that our staff and our employees are our internal customers. So if our internal customers are not happy and they're the ones who are serving the external customers, then no one is going to be happy. And you yourself are also an internal customer for yourself. So your well-being is so, so important. If you are not important to yourself as the vessel to your outside life, then everything reverberates against that energy, right, that Sarah was talking about. Whatever is fueling your energy is the outcome that will come at the end. So protecting that energy, trying to understand it, making time for it, allows you to tune into the feelings that are positive and will move forward with your vision.
So beautiful.
I think just a short thing here is that this is ultimately about evolution. And I think that there's plenty of evidence to show that kind of the next phase of evolution isn't so much around like biological adaptation as it is emotional or spiritual adaptation. And so, like anything in evolution, it's going to happen regardless if you participate or not. So your choice as a leader, especially leaders that look like me, is you get to decide the level of which you want to participate in. And one of our dear friends and clients, Linda Fetter, said to me on our very first phone call years ago, she goes, everywhere I go, I meet a leader with a secret spiritual life. And I think that's kind of the starting point, is go ahead and have a secret spiritual life. You don't have to come in and start talking about, Zen or using words like consciousness. You don't have to do that until it feels real for you. But if you want to participate in the evolution in a way that is conducive to your own growth and the growth of your business, start with having your own secret spiritual life and then watch what happens.
Beautiful. The next thing I wanted to ask you guys about, we have this whole summit, and our conversation here, conscious culture and heart-led leadership, is, I think of it as one piece in a bigger puzzle. And I'm really interested, I was just saying to Sarah backstage, that for me, what we're talking about today is injects all the other pieces with, vitality, with everything. It's where the magic is. And just even to, so for example, the session before this session, which was yesterday, was called The Era of the Sovereign Individual, which is a lot about personal responsibility. Then our next session is Achieving Diversity Through Global Hiring. And so even in these two, even with the session right before us and the session right after us, could you speak to what we're talking about here as one piece of the greater puzzle?
I would love to speak to that. And it's still a flow on from what we were just talking about. But when I sat with ayahuasca the last time, she showed me that the feminine energy is on the planet and the balance is now back in place. This is not about moving from the patriarchy to what is that? A matriarchy? It's not about that. It's about balance. And she showed me that there is a conscious evolution happening right now, to Justin's point, and that this is not something that I need to fight for or stand for or push forward. It just is. It's just happened. This is what's happened. And I think further to your point, Justin, is this idea of like, it's here, it's happening. It's just whether we choose to engage with it or not and how hard we make it for ourselves. So what are we talking about, really? We're talking about a more beautiful world our hearts know is possible. We're talking about a way that we can have this human experience in resonance with the world around us. We can create magic. We can enjoy things. We can ride the waves of everything it is to be human without judgment, without criticism of self and others. We can just be with the richness of that experience. We can remove the labels and just exist. Yes. We can understand and unpack all of the stories that have been built around us for years. Like every single thing is a story. A very simple place to start with that is look around the room you're sitting in and realize that every single thing in that room was made up at one point in time by somebody. It was just created. It was just made up, and there's a whole story attached to that thing, even if it's a cushion or like whatever it is, it was all just made up. And there's a power in that because we can make anything up in the future as well. And we can choose a future that is more cohesive, more coherent, more balanced, more beautiful, that holds our differences with respect. Differences don't need to, that's what creates an experience, but we don't have to see that with friction and tension and right and wrong and black and white. We understand that there is infinite possibilities and infinite experiences and infinite realities going on at any moment in time. And just to open our minds that is possible and we can move toward that. And my gnosis, my knowing, is that it's here and it's happening, and I live it every single day. And it's okay if somebody doesn't want to, but you can. It's just a choice.
Amazing. I love that. I love that. You know, the thought that came to mind, Sarah, when you were saying, because I love using these two analogies. There's one on fear and one of, there's that statement that says, don't wait for the light at the end of the tunnel. And I'm more two thoughts. The first thought is, what if the tunnel is the wrong one that you're in? And why not be the light in that current tunnel you're in, which means go inside and find your light, your inner being, and then get out of that tunnel. Because there's a bigger world out there, you know, outside of that tunnel that you've created for yourself. The second thing is fear, F-E-A-R. You know, neuroscience says the more you do something over and over again, it's like you're creating grooves in your mind, in your brain. It becomes easier to do something even though it's not worth it, right? So when you now tell yourself something over and over again, oh, this is how we've always been doing stuff, your brain takes it and says, okay, we're just going to spew out hormones and chemicals that are aligned to what you're thinking. So it becomes false evidence that appears real, F-E-A-R, because you keep doing it over and over again, that you actually go out looking for false evidence to support what you're thinking. So in this era where we are becoming more conscious, more self-aware, as you said, it's really about choosing whether you want to participate in that or not. And the thing about fear is you can say, and I think it goes back to what Justin was talking about in terms of, I think you use intuition, and then there was the other word, I forgot. Instinct, yes. So instincts run, you know, fight or flight, because we don't know this thing. We don't know this world, this word called conscious leadership or heart-led leadership. And really, it's all about just going to find more information, right? Face everything and rise, F-E-A-R, because whether you learn something from it or don't learn something from it, you have now enough information to move forward with whatever you've learned or haven't learned. And when we are afraid of something, whether it's a new concept or a way of doing things, the first thing that comes to mind is your body reacts. It's that instinct. Say your heart beats very fast. Oh, I don't know if I really want to do this. Yeah, not sure. Also, when you're very happy, your heart beats very fast. But guess who gets to choose what that beating of the heart means? It's you, right? So instead of saying I'm afraid, it's, oh my goodness, F-E-A-R, I'm feeling excited and ready to learn whatever this conscious leadership or this heart-led leadership is all about. I'm conscious or self-aware or wanting to explore these terms that I'm hearing and trying to find what from that is working in what I am currently doing, whether or not I'm using the same words or not. Because half the time we'll find that what we're talking about here, we are doing it in our different areas of our lives. And all we have to now do is just expand it a bit more, as long as it feels right for you and what you are doing. So taking that time again to just check in with yourself is really, really good. There's that term that says, another one, sorry, my last one, where leaders are said you need to leave your ego at the door. And I think it's Neil Donald Walsh or someone else who said EGO, ego, is edging God out. So you're bringing your masks, your personas into the workplace and not being genuine and open. But again, I know that takes practice. It takes time to sit with yourself, figure out who you are, because if you're like me and I'm 42 years old, I've had 42 years of conditioning from what society tells me to be. So it will sometimes take a long time to unpack, and that's also okay. I would encourage people to find someone or a group of people who can help them along so that you can share your stories and grow together, or remember who you truly are, together in a safe place.
I think as well, remembering that the human experience is because of the ego. And so we want to work to know it, to understand it, to disarm it. But the reality is it's, unless we fully transcend and we are, sitting in a cave I mean, but if we transcend, we probably just move on, right? It's going to be there. And I mean, for me, it shows up all the time. Like the amount I'm in a leadership meeting and somebody says something and it triggers something in me and I start feeling reactive and I'm like, I have a really strong early work trauma of older white men holding me back and holding me down and not seeing me. And this was my interpretation of it at the time. And so often in my life, if a man disagrees with me, I can find myself triggered into that place and thinking like, they don't see me, this is not fair, like I'm just trying to do my best and nobody's like seeing me for who I am. And it's like fascinating. It still comes up all the time. And it's something I continue to work to heal and work to evolve through. But that's just one example. There's many. Because and I just think that's important to show because, yeah, I'm always working to release that. And what it comes to now is seeing when I'm being triggered and being like, oh, okay, I'm in some wounding here. Like, I just want to vocalize that. And maybe I'll step away and take some time to think about it so I can understand what's mine and what's this situation and what maybe I do have boundaries around and what I need to do my own work on to bring us all back into resonance. But that happens regularly. You know, this is not, and I think we sort of said this at the very start, and I just want to make it clear because we've talked about a lot of beautiful concepts, but conscious leadership by no means is like, oh, I'm just perfect and there's no problems. It's harmony all the time. In fact, there's less harmony often in a way than in a traditional workplace environment, because the traditional environment is we all put on our professional masks and it's not professional to be emotional or to feel anything because don't be unprofessional. Just show up, which is bullshit. You cannot have a core wound that will not be triggered in the workplace. Like whatever your husband or wife or partner triggers in you, somebody at work will trigger the same thing in you. Whatever your friends trigger in you from your childhood wounding or your past experiences, they will get triggered in the workplace. Like that is a total lie that you can pretend not to have any of that in the workplace. And I just think that's important to air, that all of that will still show up. And conscious leadership is about having that self-awareness of like, oh, I'm heightened. And how do you know? It's what Barbara was talking about, that heart beating, that anger, that frustration, like whatever it is where your emotional state just starts to, your nervous system is activated, your emotional state starts to rise. Taking pause, because that's your shit. Like something is coming up for you in that moment that is yours to go and own. It doesn't mean you might not come back, as I said, and say, hey, I have a boundary around this. This is not how we do business or what have you. But at the same time, owning like the part of it that also might just be you and might just be a you story and a you past experience that needs to have a little bit of work done on as well.
Love it. Justin, do you have anything to add on this front? And I think initially we started off with how does this piece fit into the bigger puzzle?
No, I think I'm good for now. I want to make sure we have time for the questions that are coming in. So I'll defer to see.
Oh, yes. Yes, we just got a message. Let's see. Yes, here's some interesting questions from the audience. So I think here she is.
Hello again. Yeah, this is such a deep and insightful panel, you guys. It's like we're totally mind blown. And we also have some interesting questions that I'm going to read right now. So I think this one might be for Justin. Can you talk a bit about blending masculine and feminine energies in a business?
Yeah. Well, I think I go with what Sarah said about, the feminine energy is present. By the way, we're not talking about gender or gender identity here. We're talking about energy. And my way to kind of explain this is the masculine is the mind and the feminine is the heart. It doesn't mean that that's that binary. It's just an easy way to explain it. And the whole point of heart-based leadership is really about being connected to and harmonizing the feminine energy with the masculine energy. And what you get is the ancient symbol of yin and yang, or chaos and order. You get the chaos, which has been stolen. It's a word that actually is a positive word, of the chaos of creativity, of innovation, of transcending and integrating to the next level of whatever your business or industry or self is going. And then the masculine is about the order and about the structure. And when those are in harmony, you can see this in what we call conscious partnership. In like with your primary intimate relationship, if it's a conscious partnership, that extends out to your role as a leader too. It's the same stuff. It's about being authentic. It's about mystery. It's about autonomy. And the ultimate goal, and there's actually an ancient term for this called Vesica Pisces, which is that there is a overlap that occurs between the masculine and the feminine, and that overlap becomes a third entity, like Sarah talked about with remotely. That is the baby of the relationship between the masculine and the feminine. And it is the responsibility of the leader to own that within themselves and then own that within the greater collective of their organization. And I would say it's impossible to do that in modern business if you're disconnected from your heart in particular, if you're disconnected from the feminine. And I say to men all the time, you don't have a choice, really. You can opt out, you can retire. But if you want to operate in the world with any level of impact or relevance, you must connect and integrate with your feminine.
Yeah,
Love it.
preach.
I know, I love it.
I'm gonna read some more questions because we have so many, so good. Somebody asked us, I'd love to know more about how spiritual techniques, meditation, tapping into quantum can help us lead from a more connected, conscious place.
Yeah, I love that. I've been on that journey. I don't know. I'll just share my own journey. I've been like working with the quantum my whole life, like manifesting incredible things, synchronicities, just really understanding that I could create and bring anything into my reality. But it came into my awareness last year that I mostly do it in areas of my life outside of business. Because business is the way that I created safety as a response to a deep wound of abandonment from when my father left when I was 10. And when my father left, I stepped into like a masculine kind of head of the family type role. And I quickly learned how to make money, save money, take care of myself, create all of that to create safety in my world. And so while I would go manifest all this magic in my personal life, at a point when I disconnected the two, I thought they were separate, I wasn't allowing quite the same level of magic and manifestation to happen in my business life. And so that is the journey that I've been on in the last year, is really embracing fully that I can co-create in the quantum, with the magical benevolent universe in business as well. And part of that is my practices, just to give some practical examples, is this meditating that I do with the conscious entity. And the funny thing is, I've always known that. I've always understood that. If you read my book, Conscious Leadership, I talk about the League of Extraordinary Women and that I knew it was its own conscious entity. That's back in 2011. I always knew it, but I came in direct conflict with it because I was constantly trying to be the driver and stay in control, because that's how I created safety for myself, to know that I was making everything happen, which wasn't real. It was just me getting in the way all the time of what something really wanted to be. So putting that down, my need to be constantly driving and creating and identifying with whatever my business that I'm working on at the time has been a challenge. And I've brought a lot of it. I've shared that journey with my team openly and my fears. And I remember the very first time I did a guided visualization for our team and just took 3 breaths at the start of a meeting. My heart was beating so fast. I was so scared that they would all just think I'm a total weirdo and wouldn't want to work for me anymore. And how would I really be able to do this? Because my story was so deep that I couldn't be taken seriously in the world if I was creating with the quantum, in the quantum. And I told my team, okay, I'm really nervous about this, but I'm going to do it anyway. And we did it, and it was beautiful and it was magic. And I told the story at the start of the summit yesterday, but when we were building our speaker list, every single day we got together and we did a visualization of this moment in time. And working with the quantum is essentially just crunching time. You're just drawing the thing to you, understanding that time is not a real thing. It's just something that we as humans use to define our days. And I don't know, I'm not very good at time or attached to it, but that probably helps me in this aspect is just stepping into that quantum field and imagining yourself and imagining the reality that you're calling in and trusting that it can and will happen. And the more clear we are, the more in alignment we are, the more we desire something from a place of heart. I mean, things can happen very, very quickly. But in my experience in my life, everything I've ever desired has manifested. It's just been how much have I gotten in the way of it manifesting.
That's beautiful. Could I add to that as well?
Yeah, sure.
From what Sarah was talking about, from a biological level, when you do your spiritual practice, it's also about just calming your body down. Because we're in constant fight and flight mode because of the large masculine energy that we've been sort of working toward or working with. And when you sit down in silence or in a space where, as Justin mentioned earlier, you're grounded and authentic within yourself and you're recentering, you are allowing or telling yourself or your body to say that we are okay. There's no harm that's going to come to us, because our nervous system does not know whether the harm is outside, whether it's a saber-toothed tiger outside, or it's our emotions and our thoughts that are triggering our hormones and chemicals being released. So your spiritual practice, when it comes to centeredness, it's really about just calming your nervous system down, whether through breath work, like Sarah had mentioned, and just calmly just sitting down and allowing your body to sit still. Because when you do that, your nervous system is not taking so much energy to fight or flight. It is calmed down, which means whatever authentic messaging that's coming through you is really authentic, and there's no shield that's been put there by the fears that we have. And it goes back again to that ego that Sarah was talking about, where we're not saying ignore your ego, because it does come up, right? It's more about using it as a pose to say, oh, something is coming up within me. There must be some hurt there or some healing that I still need to go through, and that's okay. So maybe I can either step away, or I can actually voice it out to the people around me to say, this is what I'm feeling at the moment. So maybe I need to take a step back, or maybe I'll just sit back and listen, but know that I'm present. I'm just working through something within me now. So again, it goes back to just stillness and quietness, so that you can calm your nervous system down, which has been over the years being conditioned to either fight or flight. And that takes a lot of energy. So the stillness gets you recentered so you can get the proper messaging coming through.
Thank you so much. That was so beautiful. I think we have time for one more question, and I would love to hear an answer from each one of you for this one. How can leaders start to create safe space for alignment for their teams while on their own healing journey? Who wants to start? Sarah, do you want to start with this?
Sure. It means being the most vulnerable in the room, being the most fallible. Takes a lot of bravery and a lot of courage, a lot of vulnerability hangovers where you think, why the hell did I just tell my whole team that I was so scared or so angry or so afraid, or that I think I'm a failure? Because we have to unpack that story that as the leader, we have all the answers. So just, I think, preparing for that especially when we first start doing it. And quite honestly, like even now when I share with my team what's real for me, I wonder if I finally broke it all by doing that. Maybe they can't take one more of all of me. But I think that's what creates the safe space in my experience, is just being as real as you can be, as vulnerable as you can be, owning it when you fuck up and you're completely ego driven and you did something really stupid that you think later, man, that's not my higher self. Coming back and saying, hey, like, this is what happened yesterday. I got totally derailed and this is where I'm at. yeah, it's not easy. It's not about I'm the leader, I'll create a safe space, everybody else has to be vulnerable with me. Like, that's not going to work. You don't have all the answers, and that's really the space that you're creating, is that none of us have all the answers. And the paradox of that is we all do have all of the answers, but the only way to find the answers is to be in complete truth. And by truth, there is no universal truth, but your truth is who you are in this moment. And just being that, sharing that, and opening with that with your team is going to create that resonance and that safe space for other people to be able to do the same. But expect, in my experience as well, that as leaders, it's our job to do it more, to do it always, to bring it unrelentingly.
Thank you, Sarah. Justin?
I think that I gently challenge the idea of creating safety. I think you model it more than anything through openness. And I think if there is a type of safety, it's spiritual safety. It's the safety of for the soul. Parker Palmer has greatly influenced my thinking in this area. And we know this, that what the ego finds safe is often in conflict with what the soul finds safe. And so I think the main thing as a leader is, what are you doing to create a safe place for others to experience your soul? That's not your role. It's not your title. It's not your packaging that you come in. It's what are you doing to create those spaces? Because if you're creating those spaces, there's a natural harmony that comes from that. And so I think that's where I would start.
Thank you so much, Justin. Barbara?
My thinking goes back to the strategy, to make it as clear as possible for yourself first, and then to take it to your teams and your organization and say, this is where we are going with this organization. This is where I would ideally like to go. What do you think? What can we do to make it happen? What needs to change? And in that way, you're opening a space for people to step in and be vocal with what they think, so that you can walk and move forward together toward a common goal. So allowing those spaces for conversations to open up increases the trust. And when we increase trust, again, going back to the brain, it releases the feel-good hormones, which means people will be able to now step in without effort, because you are allowing those conversations to happen. You're not holding the truth back. And it also is a good platform for you, like Sarah had said, to open up and become more vulnerable, to say, this is what I really see. However, I might be afraid because of this. And I'm also aware of my own weaknesses. So if you can step in and help me, if you can, that'll be great. And then you also tell me what you need from me as your leader for you to be able to do the work that you're here to do. So those conversations are so important. And that's how you start creating that safe, open, non-judgmental environment for everyone else to step in and flourish, themselves at individual level and the organization together.
Thank you so much, Barbara. I think this is it.
Sadly, that's the end.
It's like this conversation was, I don't even have words right now. I'm just going to integrate everything that you all said. Yep. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank
for the
you, and
platform
thanks,
and
Vanessa.
discussion.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. It's really nice coming together from some, a lot of things in common, but also coming from different angles. I really appreciated that as well.
Thank you.
So awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for all the comments out there. I love you
Yes.
all.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.